Hare Krishna. We are now reading the fourth chapter, where we are going to very soon hear about Narad Muni instructing Vyasdev. But what is happening now is the connection between the first three chapters of the first canto, which we discussed till this week, basically answers the 6 questions which Shaunakadi Rishis had asked. So basically, the 6 questions have been answered. So in one sense, the dialogue should be over. But devotees are generally very greedy. They want to hear more and more about Krishna. They are never satiated. Vayam tuna vitripyama uttama shloka vikrame yashrinvatam rasagyanam swadu swadu pade pade. They want to hear more and more and more. So then Shaunakadi Rishis are going to ask more questions. And especially yesterday Baldev Prabhu gave a connection between the third and the fourth chapter, because the 6th question was, after Krishna disappeared, where did the religious principles go for shelter? For that time, Sutta Goswami had answered by saying, Krishna Sudama Upagate Jnana Dharma Bihisaha Kalo Nashta Drishamesha Puran Arko Dunodita. So Srimad Bhagavatam has appeared. So then, taking a cue from this, the next 3 questions have started. For the first question was about Srimad Bhagavatam, which we discussed yesterday. When was it spoken, how it appeared, all that. And the second question is today and for the next few days, text number 4 till text number 8, about the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. Who is this speaker, Shukdev Goswami? We heard he's like this. We heard he's so renounced. He never stays in a place for more than 15-20 minutes. The time that it takes to milk a cow. So how come he stayed for 7 days and 7 nights? So like that. And then the third question will be about the hearer of Srimad Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit. He was giving shelter to everyone. How come he renounced everything? So they are very excited now, and they have asked these 3 questions extra. And the answer to these 3 questions will be the remaining 4th chapter and till the 19th chapter. The entire first canto from now on is an expansion to the answer to these 3 questions asked in the 4th chapter. Of course, in between you will hear about Pandavas retiring timely. But as Gaur Vilas Prabhu very beautifully explained the other day, that Bhagavatam is like a snake. Snake will go like this, snake will go like this, but snake is always going forward. So similarly said, Bhagavatam may appear to be digressing, but no, it is all connected and it adds to the rasa, and finally we are going forward. So like this, these 3 questions will be elaborated, and the second question is what we are discussing today about Shukdev Goswami. Today's verse is on Shukdev Goswami. His qualities are being mentioned, like how he was Mahayogi, means a great devotee. First quality. Samadrak, equibalanced, equipoised. Nirvikalpaka, absolute monoist. Ekanta matir, fixed in his concentration, oneness of mind. And unnidra, nidra means sleep. Unnidra means one who has conquered sleep, or one who has conquered ignorance, who is self-realized. And Guda Muda Iveyate, he is keeping himself secret. He doesn't reveal, he is not showing off. He is self-effacing. Guda Muda Iveyate, he goes around like a fool, like an ignorant person, so that nobody can recognize that he is so self-realized. But he cannot hide himself, because he will speak open. Prabhupada says, a fool is undiscovered till he opens his mouth. Similarly, a wise man, a self-realized pure devotee, may not open his mouth. But when he opens, people will realize he is pure devotee. So that's what happened with Shukdev Goswami. And, and the first line of the purport I was reading, it's very fascinating. Just listen to this first line. Srila Shukdev Goswami was a liberated soul. And thus, he remained always alert, not to be trapped by the illusory energy. Okay, Shukdev Goswami is liberated, and therefore he remained alert. Generally we think, if he's liberated soul means you can ignore Maya. Now if a liberated soul is alert, how much more we have to be alert? It's amazing. So we have to deal with illusory energy 24/7. And to deal with the illusory energy, alertness is very, very important. There are three things needed when you're fighting a war. If you are an army soldier, you need three things to win over your enemy. First is you need to have knowledge of your weapons. Which weapon, AK-47, this rifle, that bomb. You need to have knowledge of what all weapons are there. Now, simply knowledge will not be sufficient. You also need training to use those weapons. You can't be textbook expert and then go on fighting the war. So, knowledge of the weapons, then training in using those weapons. And these two are not sufficient. Because some time ago, some CRPF Jawans were there in some Naxalite area. They had knowledge of all the weapons. They had training also. But they were not alert. They were ambushed. And they got destroyed. All three are needed. You may be alert, but if you don't have weapons. So we need all three, training, weapons and alertness. So we have been given the weapons by our parampara. Srimad Bhagavatam, DT worship, so many things have been given. And we are also given training. We attend the classes, we feel sleepy, still we stand up, we hear. We have manuals for DT worship, we are trained by the head pujari, we are corrected how to do DT worship, how to worship Bhagavatam, how to associate with devotees. So we have knowledge, we have training. But we also need to be alert. And the role model for us is Sukadeva Goswami. He was so alert and so focused on Krishna consciousness that for 16 years he did not come out of the womb of his mother. Why? He said, because there is so much Maya. I am afraid of Maya. Amazing, isn't it? Generally a child remains in the womb for 9 months. Here for 16 years he is not coming. And Vyasdev, the father was repeatedly telling him, Arey beta, come out, we are there. No, I'm afraid of Maya. Finally, in frustration, Vyasdev told him, Arey, why are you troubling me and my wife? Why are you troubling us? Why don't you come out? He said, no, that is Maya is very strong. Krishna bhuliya jeev bhoga vancha kare, nikatastha maya tare, jhapatiya dare. We forget Maya, we forget Krishna bhuliya jeev, and then we try to enjoy bhoga vancha kare, nikatastha maya tare, and Maya is very nearby, next to Krishna, jhapati, she grabs you. So Sukadeva Goswami said, I cannot come out, Maya is very powerful. So then Vyasdev said, Arey beta, come out, I am there, I assure you, Maya will not harm you. So Sukadeva Goswami said, who wants your assurance? Just now you said, I am troubling you and your wife, that means you are in duality. You are thinking in terms of duality. So I can't get your assurance. So then Vyasdev said, okay, then whose assurance you want? Then Sukadeva Goswami in the womb, he said, I want the assurance of someone. From that person I want assurance who's controlling this Maya. If he tells me you will not be affected by Maya, then I will come out. So then Vyasdev immediately went to Dwarka. That time Krishna was residing in Dwarka and he requested him. And then Krishna came at the behest of Vyasdev. And he came and assured Sukadeva Goswami. And Sukadeva Goswami in the womb, he said, oh, thank you so much. Now I will come. And Krishna said, what? What a pleasing voice you have. Krishna heard the voice of the child in the womb, who was now 16 years old, and said, you have such a beautiful voice. I will henceforth call you Shuka. You are like a parrot. So Sukadeva Goswami is somebody whose Namkaran was done by Krishna himself. And he is so self-realized, so self-controlled. In fact, once it is said that in one kingdom there were sweets put on his tongue. But still he didn't salivate. Like imagine if you are told about crispy, hot gulab jamun, which is just the right amount of cooking, which is brownish and it is succulent. Just hearing this, our tongue starts salivating. Jalebi, which is, crispy, hot, right from the oven, right from the frying pan. So when we hear it, our tongue starts salivating. And Sukadeva Goswami's tongue, it was put. And still he was so equipoised. Nirvikalpaka, it is explained. Ekanta matir, all the 6 qualities are mentioned in today's verse. So, and still he is alert. Isn't it amazing? So, and the last line of the verse is very powerful, very beautiful, where it is mentioned that he is, Guda Muda Iveyate. He appeared to be like an ignorant person. And he did not reveal his glories. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, he quotes this in English, the very famous verse from the Gita. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagriti sanyami tasyam jagriti bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. That what is night time for materialistic person is daytime for self-realized, and what is night for self-realized is day for materialist. Which means when the materialist person is going to sleep, that time the self-realized sage wakes up. And when the self-realized sage wants to sleep, that is the time a materialist wakes up. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, both are extremely alert. Like we see, many times we see very sincere devotees, they may get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And outside people are shocked. 3 o'clock you get up, and that is the time they come back from party and they go to sleep. And the devotees go to sleep at 8:30, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. That is when the party begins in the night for materialistic person. I remember once New Year, 1st January, a lot of people come on the 1st January for Mangalarti because they think if we come for Mangalarti on 1st January, the whole year will be auspicious and we'll be able to come. So a lot of people come. And suddenly in that, once I remember 1st January, I saw one person in the Mangalarti. I said, Arey, this person comes very rarely. But today he has come very good. Maybe 1st January he has come, that's why. So I went to him after Tulsi Aarti. I caught his hand. I said, Prabhu, very nice. Today is 1st January, that's why you came. You got up very early and you came, no? He said, no, Prabhuji, we partied the whole night. I saw the watch, it was 4:30. So I thought, abhi सोने से पहले तो मंगल आरती कर लेते हैं. इतना देर जगे रहे तो थोड़ा और. So Srila Prabhupada, that's what he says, that both are alert. In fact, once one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, what is the purport of this verse? Ya nisha sarva bhutanam. Sleeping, one should, self-realized sage gets up, wakes up, and materialistic person sleeps. What is the purport of this? Prabhupada looked straight into his eyes and said, purport is, of this verse is, a devotee should come for Mangalarti. That is the purport. So, there is one lecture of Srila Prabhupada, August 1974 in Vrindavan. Very beautiful statement Srila Prabhupada makes there. Something to this effect, what is mentioned in today's verse. This is August 13, 1974. So we were hearing it in the DT room. So then I asked devotee to record which number it is. Then I checked. Very powerful statement. Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness means conscious of Krishna and cautious of Maya. I'll repeat. You can also repeat after me. It's a beautiful statement. Krishna consciousness means conscious of Krishna and cautious of Maya. So Shukdev Goswami was completely Krishna conscious. But that is first half of the deal. So absorbed in Krishna and also cautious of Maya. In fact, he was so absorbed in Krishna that people thought he was a madman. In the next verses we will see. But he didn't care. How transcendental he must be. You have to be really transcendental to give the Bhagavatam class which he gave. I mean, the first Bhagavatam class, if you are giving the first time you are giving Bhagavatam class, I'm just giving an example. Let's say one of you here who has never given Bhagavatam class, okay? And you are told, give Bhagavatam class. First class you are giving. And you are just 16 years old. And you're sitting on the Vyasasana to give the class, like Shukdev Goswami is giving the class. Look at the way he must be transcendental, that his father is sitting in the class, Vyasdev. Now Vyasdev has compiled the Bhagavatam. And he is sitting in the class. Imagine you are giving class and your spiritual master comes and sits in the front. Okay, Prabhu, this is your first class, I want to hear. You are going to repeat whatever I have spoken, whatever I have trained you. Let me see what you speak. How will you feel if you are giving the first time Bhagavatam class and your spiritual master comes with all enthusiasm to hear? Today is this devotee's Bhagavatam class, I want to go. Guru Maharaj comes to hear. So how transcendental you must be, not to be, we would panic, isn't it? Not only Vyasdev was present in Shukdev Goswami's class, Vyasdev's guru, Narad Muni, was also present. So imagine you are giving class, your spiritual master is there and Prabhupada also comes. Of course, Srila Prabhupada is always present in his DT form. But imagine physically, Srila Prabhupada also comes and sits in your class and you're giving first time Bhagavatam class. And how transcendental you must be to speak like what Shukdev Goswami speaks. And there is no scope for speculation. You can't say, I think it must be like this, or maybe it is like, there is no scope for speculation when spiritual master and Prabhupada are sitting in your Bhagavatam class. And Shukdev Goswami must be so transcendental, he is speaking bindas, he is speaking the essence. Sha, Vidvara, Ushtra, Khare, he is giving Gali also. Materialistic people are asses, camels, dogs, donkey. He has nothing to hide. He is inside, outside, congruent, aligned completely with Krishna's vision, Krishna's desire. So amazing. And then not only his father, Narad Muni, Vyasdev, there were so many other saintly personalities. Annecha Devarshi, Rajarshi Varya. So, lot of Rajarishis, Devarishis, Brahmarishis, all of them had come for his class. From Nana Shreya Pravartan, they all told their disciples, we are going to a holy place. Come, let us all go and hear this Bhagavatam class. So, he must be really Avadut. Sometimes when we are bewildered by some devotee's behavior and we don't want to offend him, we say, Arey, wo to Avadut hai. But Avadut is a very big title. And Shukdev Goswami fits into that Avadut. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, he clarifies that we can't just call anybody as Avadut. He says Avadhuta means somebody who has controlled his senses, somebody who is absorbed in Krishna. He gives many qualities. And then in the end he says, to remember who is an Avadut, you should remember the letters of the word Avadut. A, Va, Dhu and Ta. A means Akshara. Akshara means inexhaustible. Like when Nityananda Prabhu would do Kirtan, he could, inexhaustible energy. 3 months non-stop he would do Kirtan. Akshara. So, Avadut cannot be somebody who is, appearing to be transcendental, but is complaining about prasad, is complaining about small things. Then he's not Avadut. He is actually having unlimited energy for spiritual activities. And Va is Varshneya, highly respectable personality. His thoughts, his actions, his character command the highest respect. And Dhu is referring to, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, Durga, one who has transcended Durga, means one who is above and beyond material energy's influence. And Ta means Tat Tvam Asi, one who is knower of the absolute truth. Such a person can be Avadut. And the most important is he has no desire to show off. Guda Muda Iveyate. He is going around like an ignorant person. For that, he doesn't want to waste time in signing autographs, taking selfies. People, oh, your star has come. He doesn't want any of that. Now, that doesn't mean if somebody is promoting himself is Maya. No, as a service, some devotees have to do that. By the order of Srila Prabhupada was a lion, was roaring. And we have seen devotees who are able to preach a lot. We are not talking about externals here. We are talking of the inner mood. So the inner mood is a devotee has no desire, he has nothing to do with the worldly fame. He has nothing to do with the cameras flashing and media coming and interviewing. No, he doesn't want all of that. He wants to love Krishna. Some time ago, our Honorable Prime Minister of India, he was giving some Mann Ki Baat talk and he quoted one Bengali, some verse. And it became sensational. Oh, he knows Bengali. Some quoted some Rabindranath Tagore, some Bengali spoke for a few minutes. So people became very excited. Media loves to make sensation. So they went to one very feisty Bengali woman, politician lady, and asked her, what do you think? So she said, I was laughing when I read this. She got so angry and irritated because elections were coming. So she understood that this is a political stunt. So she said, oh, the Prime Minister is a braggart. He's a show-off. Just little, and there is a teleprompter. He has just read from the teleprompter and he has spoken one Bengali verse. And you are saying he knows Bengali. I know 12 languages. But do I show off? I know Tamil. She mentioned all the languages she knows. And then in that interview, she's saying, I know Vietnamese also and Chinese also. But I never show off. So I was laughing. I said, who is showing off here, Because we are insecure. We are fearful that I may lose my power. I may lose my position. But a pure devotee, he knows that this world there is nothing to show off here. We are all fleeting. We will all go off. Of course, that doesn't mean one who is preaching vigorously is showing off. No, humility is something very internal, It's not like, there was once a man in a village. He was given the award for humility. You are the most humble man in the village, and a badge was given to him. But after some time, the municipal authorities of that village came and withdrew that badge because he was so happy, he put that badge and he used to going around everywhere saying, see, I am the most humble man. Of all the good qualities I have, humility is the best quality I have. Humility is very abstract. It's very personal. We have to have it, but we can't go around showing it, It's like, to give a very gross example, it's like, you wear underwear, right? But you don't show it. It's not to be shown. We have to wear humility. But it's not something, okay, see, I'm very humble, look at my eyes, look at my body posture. No, that's not the point. We are here talking about Shukadeva Goswami's mood. He didn't want anything of the world. Externally also it manifested like this. That's for us to celebrate. But we have to take the principle. And what is the principle? That a pure devotee, liberated soul understands everything is fleeting, everything is destructible. Look at the leaves dropping in, when you see leaves drop from the trees, they're green when they drop, and see the way they wither out. I was staying in my hometown last year for 8 months. I was going through all those lanes and gullies where I grew up because I spent my first 10 years in my village. And then after so many years, I spent so much time. So I was recalling my childhood. Oh, there was a beautiful house here. And I remember every year I would go to the village. That house was deserted because the members died. Something happened. Slowly, it was falling. And now there's nothing there. There's only sand. And once it was a very active, vibrant place. So, the body itself is so temporary. And Haridas Thakur, the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that there is nobody who has chanted the holy names like him. He has been called as the greatest chanter of holy names. And when he was leaving his body, he tells Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that, ek kita mari gela. He says, one insignificant ant is going to die. Kaha prithvira hani haila. What loss will it make to the planet if one insignificant ant dies? This is Haridas Thakur saying, one who is chanting 192 rounds, attentively. So you can imagine, that is the consciousness of a pure devotee. He understands that there is nothing to brag about. Because, the problem is, in this world, whether it is the politicians or even we struggling sadhakas, we think that there is something inherently wrong in being small. The whole world teaches us that to be big is important. We think being small means you are being diffident. We think being self-effacing is a disqualification. Self-effacing is a glorious quality because it is a reality. We are actually small. And in that smallness, we can actually feel a sense of belongingness with Krishna. We can feel loved by the universe. I hate to say this, but I'm tempted to share my own personal experience. I don't get this often, but there's one experience which kind of theoretically convinced me of this. I used to go to Hanging Garden, and in the evenings, I used to lie down on the grass there. There is a small grass patch. Look at the sky. One day I was looking at the sky, all the birds were flying back to their nest, the sun was setting, and I was looking at the sky and I was present. You know what I mean? I was like trying to take in the whole thing. And soon the birds are flying, and then it became darker, the sun set, and then there was a plane flying, and with its twinkling red and yellow lights, and that plane seemed so tiny in comparison to the huge sky. And I was thinking, suddenly the thought came, it's not that I was thinking, just a realization came, the passenger inside that plane, he must be having so many worries in his head. But how insignificant that person is in comparison to the gigantic universe. But I didn't feel I am insignificant. I was thinking he must be insignificant. Next day, paradoxically, I was on a flight going to Australia, which is 7,000 miles from Mumbai. And when our plane was descending from 30,000 feet above, I was looking at the land, huge lands down from the window seat. And I saw one garden, I saw one bench. I figured out it must be the plane was descending, so maybe a bench. And I thought if somebody is sitting there, how insignificant that person is in comparison to the huge land. But I didn't think I'm insignificant. See, when we see from a larger perspective, we can see the smallness. I remember when I was lying down in that grass and looking at the sky and the plane disappeared after some time. Then I saw so many stars. I was looking at the stars, in a state of just amazement and in a state of being present. I was looking at all the stars and I was thinking this star is so insignificant. And then I got a realization that star may actually not be there. Because, the star may have died also, but the light travels. It could be, say, 2000 light years away. That means it has taken 2000 years for the light from that star to come for me to be able to see. So right now the star may not be there. In the sense, the universe is so huge. Earth appears to be an insignificant dot, and inside that earth we are there. In one small city, small lane. How insignificant we are actually. So I was looking at the stars and then I saw the plane. Then the next day I was in the plane looking at the earth. Anyway, this was all in my head so far. Then I came to our devotee's house. I was feeling a little nervous. I didn't know first time I'm going there. Who are these people? What program? I had no idea. A little nervous. So in the night I was sleeping and the window they had put next to the bed. From the window I could see outside. It was night time and I could see a lot of stars. And suddenly I remember feeling, because I had been reflecting on this for the last 36 hours, for when I saw the stars, immediately a realization dawned on me that these were the same stars I was conversing with or I was with. Just previous day, in a different country, different city. The stars are here. We are all friends. We belong to each other. We are part of the same universe. I felt so small, yet at the same time, I felt loved. I felt a sense of belonging. So this universe is, after all, Brahmanoi Pratishta Aham. Krishna says this is coming from me. So we are so minuscule and insignificant, but as we connect to this insignificance, we feel a sense of belonging. We feel safe in that relationship. But somehow we are brainwashed. As we grow up, as we are small children, babies only, we start getting attention. A small baby, everybody comes and says, oh, so cute baby. Everybody is surrounding the baby. Somebody, his nose is just like his father. Everybody is pulling his cheek and the child starts getting attention. Wow, I'm somebody special. And then we grow up, this intoxication, I'm the center of the universe. And that's why it's natural for us to show off, to say more than, to overstate our achievements. That's why when we glorify ourselves, ignorant people may get impressed. But those are evolved beings or those are advanced Vaishnavas, they actually, they just feel pity. They feel sorry they don't say it because they are sensitive. But Bhagavatam says that the body ultimately whatever we are doing is on the basis of this body. And the body is what? It's simply a bag of, the Bhagavatam says the body will be ultimately converted to either earth, ashes or stool. In some cultures, they throw the body where the birds come and eat the body after death, and then what you eat becomes your stool. So body becomes stool. Or some people burn the body, it becomes ashes. Or some people bury, it becomes earth. Once Kalakanta Prabhu was here and he was speaking from the 5th canto, and he was speaking all those hundreds of devotees' names mentioned, not hundreds of devotees, many devotees, pure devotees' names are mentioned, how they ruled the earth. And he was saying, just hearing these names, we'll get purified. But in fact, there's another dimension to this. Just imagine, they are all pure devotees of Krishna. Their names are in Bhagavatam. And they've ruled the earth. But for us, they are simply names. So this is another perspective he was giving. He was saying, it's purifying to us, but we also have to remember that if such exalted personalities, we can't even pronounce their names properly, he was saying. But they, once upon a time, they were here on this planet Earth. That's why scriptures say this is not our home. We have to go back home. Because everything here is Nashwar. And pure devotees, like Shukdev Goswami, they are naturally aligned to this principle. Internally. Externally, they may do whatever. They're completely aligned. Like Srila Prabhupada was totally aligned. When he was caught off guard, suddenly in the class, he was sitting on a Vyasas and one man, and he was speaking on Varnashram, the 4 classes. This was in Germany. One man suddenly asked, you think you are the topmost class? Srila Prabhupada immediately said, no, I'm the 5th class. I'm lower than all the 4 classes. When you are provoked spontaneously, what is inside only comes out. In New York in 1966, look at this. Allen Ginsberg was coming for the program. Now, Allen Ginsberg was a very controversial figure. If Srila Prabhupada was seen to be associating with him, it had a lot of ramifications. So, Allen Ginsberg was advocating free sex, he was advocating LSD drugs. Everything that Srila Prabhupada was against, he was openly championing it. And he was also glorifying Swamiji, Srila Prabhupada. So, it's a very tricky situation. For the reporter, in front of everyone, asked Srila Prabhupada, are you Allen Ginsberg's guru? Now, if Srila Prabhupada says yes, that means Srila Prabhupada is endorsing what he is doing. And if Srila Prabhupada says no, that means he is alienating a prospective devotee who has come to ISKCON or Krishna consciousness. What a tricky situation, isn't it? But when that reporter asked him, are you Allen Ginsberg's guru? Srila Prabhupada, without batting an eyelid, spontaneously said, I am nobody's guru, I am everybody's servant. So nonchalantly he said it. There is another instance in Canada, when Mr. Banerjee started coming to Srila Prabhupada's classes, and he was a Bengali. So, Bengali, like Prabhupada started speaking to him in Bengali, and he became very friendly with devotees. And one day, some nut went loose. Suddenly in the middle of the class, he got up and he started hurling expletives, swear words and abuses at Srila Prabhupada. Devotees were aghast. What has happened? And he abused and he walked off. And then he didn't come, naturally, for the next few days. And Srila Prabhupada one day, while after the class, he said, hey, where is Banerjee? He's not coming nowadays. Srila Prabhupada said, the devotee said, Srila Prabhupada, he is very abusive, he is offensive, good, he is not coming. Bad, good riddance to bad rubbish, good, he is not coming. Srila Prabhupada said, no, he abused me because I must have done something to him in the past life. That's okay. But why he should be deprived of Krishna consciousness? Now, these are all not coming from the head. This is coming from a heart which is imbued in a self-effacing quality. Self-effacing, efface means, mit jana. So self-effacing means अपने आप को मिटा देना, अपना vision को, Krishna को आगे रखना. Self-effacing means I am not important. What I am representing, holy name, Krishna, parampara, that is important. All the problems happen because, why we have problems is because, guys, I have come. I am going to make a difference. That's where all the problems happen. We forget to realize that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has already made a plan to deliver the universe. Prabhupada has already made a plan to deliver the universe, and I have to play one small part in that, and I am not indispensable. If I am not there, it will go on. The problem happens when I have come, guys, I am going to make a plan, I am going to deliver the universe. That's where all the problems happen. Therefore, in a spiritual society like the bona fide society like ISKCON, what will sustain this organization individually and collectively is when the members cultivate self-effacing nature. Unfortunately, I remember even in college, when we took our jobs also, biodata, we make our biodatas. Always we actually speak white lies. We put many things, many times, because we want to impress a prospective employer. This is all proof of the verse which Prabhupada quotes in today's purport. Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam. Because this is very much desired by the outside world. And people struggle and they suffer because of that. And then some of them are inclined to spiritual life. They become humble. They come to Krishna consciousness. They take shelter. And such devotees make a lot of progress. I remember once I was traveling in one place. In one place there, the devotees came to me and they were really in anxiety. 2 Grahastha men. Prabhuji, the temple president is so bad. He is doing like this. I was like shocked. I said, why don't you complain to the GBC and why don't you remove him? He said, no, Prabhuji, we don't want to offend. We are happy. I said, what? He said, no, we know that things will sort out because we will be asked in the meeting. We will not keep quiet when the meeting happens, but we don't want to make a scene out of it because we are getting shelter. Otherwise, outside, we have no shelter. At least there is Krishna consciousness here. Some managerial issues are there. So I could see, these devotees were very clear about their priorities. Krishna consciousness is most important. Issues have to be addressed, but I need shelter. I am not somebody who is going to come and change the whole system here. I trust the system, I trust Srila Prabhupada, I trust the GBC, but I need shelter. See, devotees outside Grihastha, they go through so much suffering, and then they also take shelter of scripture. So what happens is, scriptures are like microscope. Through scriptures, they are able to see the suffering in proper light. So they get wisdom. Only suffering will not give wisdom. Suffering plus scriptures, Krishna consciousness, gives realizations. So therefore, we will, because of the virtue of living in this material world, we will go through suffering. Therefore, it behooves us to be sober and to cultivate self-effacing quality. We recently had this amazing memorial festival of our Grace Sharad Biharini Mataji, and we heard, it was shocking for many of us. We had no idea this is a person who is a great devotee of Lord Narasimhadev, leaves her body on Narasimha Chaturdashi with her spiritual master chanting the holy names. And what was the most shocking for me personally was when her daughter-in-law is saying that the first instruction my mother-in-law gives me, and this is a lady who is practicing Krishna consciousness, making garlands for deities for 32 years every day. She says, when you come in front of Gopinath, never ask for anything and never complain about anything. This is exactly two things I was doing. Asking from the Lord and complaining always. I mean, for what natural bhakti must be there? And these are people unknown. I remember our Leela Priya Mataji. I think some of you must be knowing, Dr. Garg Prabhu's wife. So I know her since I was a young boy because she was a good friend of my mother and Prabhuji was a good friend of my father. We were in the railway colony. So I used to always, because he was older to my father. So, and we used to go to their house, they used to come. So now Leela Priya Mataji, whenever she spoke to me since childhood, she used to always speak to me in Marwadi. She's a Marwadi. So Marwadi Hindi, that motherly Hindi she would always speak. And recently, last few years, I would go to their house in Worli and I would speak to Prabhuji in, some Krishna conscious. And while speaking English, we speak, right? Because we have learned philosophy in English. And I would speak to her also in English and sometimes Hindi, English. But she would always speak in chaste Marwadi Hindi only. And just last year, when I was talking to her casually about her life, she's nearing 80 years now. I just asked her, Mataji, what you did? Entire life, she said she was a teacher in a school. I said, what were you teaching? She said, I was teaching English grammar. And all this she is saying in Hindi only. I said, you are an English teacher all your life? I've never heard one sentence in English. Maharaj writes in Journey Home, I think he was in Akinchan Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj ashram or somewhere. He says, in India, he says, people know little English and they're looking for an opportunity to show off. So he was saying that how this Babaji knew such fluent English, but he never spoke in English. So he talks about self-effacing quality there. So I was recalling how this Mataji was also like that. See, this requires little refinement of, the small things we try to show off. I mean, I'm speaking all these big things. Please pardon me. But the point I'm trying to make is the paradigms are different for a materialistic person and for a cultured person. A cultured person will not show off regarding fleeting, useless things of this world. Whereas a materialist person, because he holds on to that as dear life, he wants to show off. Therefore, in the Zen Buddhist tradition, they have a very funny story about how one has to be self-effacing. There was one Buddhist, Zen Buddhist, he was living in the mountain top for many years. And below the mountain was a village. And in that village, people were living their lives. And this Zen monk, this Zen Buddhist monk, he would not speak anything. He was always Maunavrat. Always accepting. Whatever came, he would accept. Completely self-effacing. He would maximum speak only 2 words in a day. That's all. So in the village, one day, one young lady, she became pregnant. So she became, and parents came to know. They asked her, hey, what is this? Who is your boyfriend? She got scared. She didn't want her boyfriend to land in trouble. So she told her parents, and all the other neighbors came, hey, what is this? You are pregnant? She said, she told that monk, that Zen Buddhist monk, he is the father of the child to be. So they said, what? They all ran to the mountaintop, and this Buddhist monk was in his own world doing his meditation. They came and bashed him up, and he was beaten black and blue, out of the blue. He had no idea. And after they beat him up, they were going. He looked at them and they said, do you know why we bet you? Because you made this girl pregnant. So he said, he is self-effacing, indifferent. He just said 2 words. Is it? And then they bet him more and then they went away. And then after some time, the girl gave birth to a baby. So they said, baby, now this Buddhist monk has to take care of the baby. So they came with the baby. They said, you rascal. They again bet him and they gave the baby. Take care of this baby. For the baby. And then they told him, take care of the baby. He said, is it? He didn't know what was happening. So he kept the baby. And then he was struggling because he was not used to all of that. And they went back. After some days, the girl realized, Arey, bahut gadbad kiya. I did a wrong thing. And she was also missing the baby she wanted. So she told everybody, I made a mistake. Actually, my boyfriend is this. So then they all realized, then they all came back. And they all fell at his feet and begged forgiveness. And he looked at them, what happened? He's looking at them and they said, sorry, you are not the father of this child. We are taking the child back. He said, is it? Again, he said only 2 words. So in the Buddhist tradition, they gave this story, very graphic story they speak, to give the point that how this world, there are extreme events happen. But what is that verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita? Ei bhalo, ei manda, ei saba brahma. This is good, that is bad. In the material world, things can invoke extreme emotions. And Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Devotion that one of the 64 qualities in devotional service is equilibrium in loss and gain. That is one of the 64 items. And why he says that? He says because when there is gain, we become so excited that we forget Krishna. And when there is loss, we lament so much that we forget Krishna. And essence of all rules and regulations is to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. That's why in the renounced order, sannyasi is not supposed to go for wedding or funeral. Because those create extreme emotions and one may forget Krishna. So the point is, everything in this world is uncertain, temporary. It can be taken away anytime. So what is the point to brag about? His Holiness Kadam Kanand Swami Maharaj gives a very powerful example from his own life. One day in the temple Bhagavatam class, he was speaking, there is this incident some of you must be knowing. He was the temple president in Vrindavan. He was doing so much service. He was handling the mafia also. The gundas, he was keeping them at bay. And all of you know the Mayapur Prabhupada Samadhi, he was the main devotee, was constructing it. Morning, Mangalarati he would attend in Mayapur. Then he would go immediately to the site from 4:35 in the morning till night 10 o'clock. He would be standing there getting the work done. He has done so much for Prabhupada's mission. And why he went to before going to Mayapur, he was serving in Vrindavan. So once these dacoits attacked him and they shot a bullet, that marking is still there on his back. And then he had to, hide and like a lot of things happened. He was in the hospital. And then the devotees came and told him, Maharaj, that time he was, Vanaprastha or Grastha. So they said, you can't stay here. Vrindavan is not safe for you. We have to go out of Vrindavan. And we were in the hospital. So how to escape now? How to go out? So he said, but some important things are there in Vrindavan, my room. Let me take that. Then we will go. So at the night, 2 o'clock, they brought the jeep. Maharaj is inside that jeep. They said, okay, go to your room quickly. And whatever is there, you take and then we will go from this place forever. So Maharaj came to his room and he was shocked. Now he had his books, belongings, everything. And when he opened the room, there was nothing in that room. And now he can't do anything there because he is supposed to leave because there is a lot of other things going on. And he had only his bead bag. And Maharaj was telling in the class that I realized at that point of time that a time will come in our life when we will have nothing but holy name. Krishna gave me that realization very early on. And I felt so helpless. I thought I had this, I had that, small things. Prahlad Maharaj says in 7th canto, that 9th chapter, that people get attached even to their furniture, at home. Prahlad Maharaj is giving so many examples. That verse, Katam Priyaya, Anukampitaya, those 3 verses. In the 2nd verse, he says how people get attached to their societies, this, that, and he says even furniture. So many things are attached to, and Maharaj was saying here that when he left that room and he was leaving Vrindavan, apparently at that time for good, he realized there's nothing, only the holy name of Krishna. His Holiness Satswarup Maharaj writes in one of his books, I think Vandanam or You Cannot Leave Boston, I think in one of the books, he writes about how there was one GBC meeting going on for 10 days in Mayapur, and he was part of some intense discussions, and some decisions were to be taken against him, or some management issues were going on. And he says, every day during Mangalarati and morning program, I was in anxiety. What decisions they will take, what will happen. And one day when I was chanting, suddenly I got a realization. Oh, Krishna revealed to me in the heart. They may take away everything. They may take away all the position. That's okay. But they cannot take my bead bag. They will not take the realization that I have in my heart on Krishna consciousness. So these exalted devotees have shown how that the best realizations come when we choose to be self-effacing, when we are insignificant. Avanti Brahman, look at him. He was so miserly, but he had some piety. So ultimately when he lost everything and people were urinating on his food, he was going through so much humiliation. At that time, Krishna gave him the best realization. He speaks about the mind giving trouble. All the realizations are there when he is suffering the most. So there are many examples. Of course, we don't have much time, but we have examples of Rishabdev, the Avadut Brahman that Prahlad Maharaj sees. We have Jada Bharat's story, of being self-effacing. Srivas Thakur pastimes are there. Each pastime we can speak for so long. But the idea is, the point is, it's not simply the great people and successful people who are creating a change. When you see your own grandparents who led a life of culture, values, they have contributed to the society as much as, say, Abdul Kalam or, some famous cricket star. See, the point is, it is not what the world recognizes us. It is our adherence to certain principles. Especially in spiritual life, the self-effacing quality is what pleases and attracts the Lord's heart. Sridhar Kolavech, this is amazing. Sridhar Kolavech, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was teasing him every day. You have Kolavecha Artha Thomar Achaye Prachur. You have lot of wealth. You are a very rich man. You are saying you have nothing. And Sridhar Kolavech would say, no, I have nothing. Mahaprabhu would say, no, you are very, very rich, and one day I am going to expose you. And how does Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expose him? Years later, when Nimai Pandit is now known as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he asks him for any benediction you want, ask for mystic perfections, ask for residence in heavenly planets. And for all these blessings, Sridhar says, not only he says, I don't want, he tells Lord Chaitanya, Tumi hao sthira, relax Baba, don't get so agitated. He tells Lord Chaitanya, relax, I don't want any of this. So Lord Chaitanya is shocked. If you don't want any of this, what do you want then? He says, I want that cute, sweet Nimai, the Brahmin boy who came and argued with me every day. I want the darshan of that boy only. So that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proved he was wealthy. Only a super wealthy man can say no to mystic perfections, a heavenly residence. What he must be possessing. So one who really possesses wealth of Krishna, he has no need, he doesn't feel any need to show off. I would like to conclude with one very, very nice, 2 incidents I would like to briefly say. Because we cannot judge devotees from their externals. I'll tell you these 2 incidents. One was, I was doing book distribution once upon a time, and Vraj Gopal Prabhu was my book distribution partner. We would go in the local trains of Mumbai, we would go to Grand Road, take a train to Borivali, and we had become like, we used to synchronize very well. We used to know when to enter, from which compartment, and I would make announcements, and he used to show the book. Sometimes he would make announcements. And then we would go to Borivali, come back, and we would come back with a score of 130, 140 books. And it was such an exhilarating experience. I remember walking back from Grand Road station to temple with an empty bag. I would feel like a cricket player, walking back to the pavilion after scoring a century. I would feel like, I've done something great. So then somewhere the scores became so important that excitement to get 100 plus. So I would look at people, give the book, I would just, in 1 or 2 seconds, I would judge whether he's going to take the book or not. Even if that man was smiling, even if that man was, pious, sincere, I would ignore him if I felt he was not going to take the book. I became very fruitive. But Rajgopal Prabhu had just joined. He was still, a very sweet and pious and very nice nature he had. So one day when I was distributing books, I made an announcement and I was showing the book. One man looked at me. He had a big ponytail, big beard. He had a very wacky sense of dress. I was like, I wanted to avoid him. He said, Hare Krishna Prabhu. So, reflex action, I looked at him. He said, he said one name. He didn't ring a bell. He said, I am Prabhupada's disciple. I said, oh. In my mind, I thought, well, anybody can say anything. But I have to get my scores, right? So I just, Hare Krishna, good to know that. And I walked ahead. And I distributed books. I ignored him. And then after some time, I had to get out of the compartment. And where is my partner? I'm looking at Brajgopal. I can't see him anywhere. And suddenly I see he's paying full Dandavat. In the local train, in the second class compartment, that Prabhuji told him also, I guess, because he was showing the book. So Brajgopal Prabhu paid full Dandavat to him in the train compartment. I was like, what is it doing? We have to distribute books. And anybody can say anything, is Prabhupada disciple or not. And what is this? The way he's wearing dress. And I was angry with him because we lost few minutes and so much score less. So then we got down. I was just chastising him the whole journey. Kya hai yaar tum? He said, nahi Prabhuji, Prabhupada disciple hai. I said, kya, koi kuch bhi bolta hai. So then, I kind of very cynically dismissed him. So then the incident was over and he was like, I was supposed to be training him. He said, okay, Prabhuji, okay. So then we came back to temple. And after a few days, His Holiness Radhana Swami Maharaj calls me. Because Maharaj must have asked somebody something. And they said, Rajbihari is doing book distribution every day. He does a lot of books. And he takes younger devotees also. So Maharaj called for him. Rajbihari Prabhu. Maharaj paid obeisances to me. I said, what? Thank you so much. You are so sensitive, Vaishnav. You are doing such nice book distribution. You know how to honor Prabhupada's disciples. All the glorification I am getting. I am like, Maharaj. Then Maharaj mentioned about one devotee he met in Juhu. Prabhupada disciple. He said, this devotee has done so much service for Srila Prabhupada. And then suddenly the whole story started falling in place. That name Maharaj said was the same name I had heard from that devotee in the local train. And then Maharaj said, and he was standing and all the ISKCON GBCs were hearing him. All the top leaders were there. And he was saying, Radhanath Maharaj, you are so good. How much nicely you have trained your brahmacharis. This devotee paid Dandavat to me in the train. What devotees you are. And when Maharaj said, I immediately told Maharaj, sorry. It's not me, it's Brajgopal Prabhu. Then I ran, I called Brajgopal Prabhu, introduced. But Maharaj didn't chastise me. Maharaj glorified me also and him also. And then Maharaj was saying how this devotee went around telling everyone. And everyone in ISKCON honors him. And everybody knows that he was very, very close to Srila Prabhupada. And he saw this sincere service attitude of Rajgopal Prabhu. And he poured out his heart. And then Maharaj told us, me and Rajgopal Prabhu, that then I said, Maharaj, but it is so deceptive. We can't make out. I didn't say what was in my mind at that time. Maharaj said, yes, a Vaishnava can never be judged like that. Of course, for managerial issues, we may take some decisions, but you cannot know what is there in the heart of a Vaishnava. In fact, he told me that in some temples he went, he was driven out because people said, you are not a Prabhupada disciple, you are a fraud. Maharaj told me this. And then Maharaj said, but I told him, if any devotee were to do that to you in our temple, that will be the last day of that devotee. And Maharaj looked at me in my eyes and said that. So the point I'm saying is, it takes one to know one. Maharaj knows, His Holiness Radhana Swami Maharaj knows that a devotee is self-effacing and we can't just because he is downplaying himself doesn't mean we ignore him. The logic of this Vyasasana itself, you will not see anywhere in any ISKCON temple a Vyasasana like this. This is the proof of the principle that this community has stood for. See, Maharaj, what he has done, in every temple, Vyasasana is one place where a speaker gives class. But Maharaj has made a Vyasasana like this. Generally Maharaj's mood would be Sunday feast class, he would give class and his god brothers and god sisters would be sitting here. And he would glorify each one of them for 5 minutes as if he has 5 mouths. And then he would tell the audience, so let us welcome him or her to Radha Gopinath Mandir. And then that devotee would say, Hari, and all devotees would say, Hari Bol. And then Maharaj would say, much louder, please. And then everybody would, and these devotees would get so embarrassed. They would feel so, they had never been honored like that anywhere. And there are 1,000 devotees packed in the temple hall, everybody shouting, Hari Bol. They're like, wow. And then I remember once I think Gurudas Prabhu or somebody, he got the chance to speak. He had never experienced something like this. He said, wow, what an experience this was. Radhana Swami Maharaj really knows how to embarrass us. And then Maharaj took the microphone and Maharaj said, oh, if you are embarrassed, then Maharaj, with this twinkle in his eye, he looked at the audience and said, if you are embarrassed, then our mission is accomplished. We want to glorify you. We want to honor you. So a Vaishnava cannot be judged by what appearance is very deceptive. And a pure devotee will know that. So this is the way Amanina Manadena principle is in action. It's not theory. One last incident I'll say is, I went to His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj when he was here. I went to his room. And I said, Maharaj, because I had heard all his stories of book distribution. Devamrita Maharaj has done book distribution in the most challenging circumstances. When behind the Iron Curtain during the communist regime, he would go risking his life. The best spy thriller novels will be nothing compared to the adventures that His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj and His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj have gone through. So I recounted all of that. Maharaj, once in an European country, you were 10 of you and the KGB came to arrest you and suddenly Krishna, all these incidents I was narrating and Maharaj was listening very graciously. He didn't cut me because, it requires a lot of grace to even listen to appreciation. Sometimes when devotees appreciate us, we cut them. But Maharaj was very genuinely listening to my heartfelt appreciation. So he heard me. And after that, what he said shocked me. With complete seriousness and straight face and candidness, he is telling me, but Prabhu, because I said, Maharaj, you have done so much for Prabhupada's mission. When you were a young man, you did so much dedication, risk, all that. He said, but Prabhu, how are what all of you are doing in Chowpatty temple? How is it in any way less than what I did? So I was like, there is no comparison. What are you saying, Maharaj? There is no comparison. No. Then Maharaj started telling what we are doing. I've never taken it seriously, but look at his mood. He's saying, you guys are staying in this crowded city of Mumbai. It's a mad place. Crazy place. And you have 100 plus brahmacharis, I heard from Gaurang Priya. There are 100 plus brahmacharis here. And then Maharaj started telling many things about our ashram. Then he started glorifying Radha Gopinath Prabhu, Gaurang Prabhu. And then, and then he took me on another journey, to be grateful to what I'm getting here. And then when I left the room, I realized what had happened. I was completely bewildered by his genuine. When I came back to my room, then I realized, I told Gaurang Prabhu later, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's legacy is perfectly going on. Such a powerful leader, was so many disciples and he's written so many books, he's a sannyasi, guru, and he has every right to claim to fame for what he has done. But with genuine authenticity, he is appreciating new bhaktas who have not even seen, 5-6 years in Krishna consciousness. So this is not simply word jugglery. So at that time I knew that this is the same. So whether it is the saints of the past, whether it is Shukdev Goswami or the devotees now, this self-effacing quality is a parampara, it is going on. And we have so many examples, we could speak for, so many Shastric examples and devotees in ISKCON. But this is the main point of today's theme. Guda Muda Iveyate. Shukdev Goswami was going around as like an ignorant person so that nobody could recognize him. So we took up some discussions from that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Any comments or questions? ग्रंथरा श्रीमद् भागवतम महापुराण की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे।